How's it going, guys? This is Al. We're coming at you with the Week 2 recap. Got to do a lineup review. I'm going to go over my article, my ESPN Best Buys article. We're going to look at where I was right, where I was wrong, where we got lucky, where we got unlucky. I'm going to go over my 5 picks against the spread from Zeidenfeld.com as well. And then we're going to look at my cash game lineup and give you my results, see how we did there as well. So, as always, let's see how many likes we can get on this video. I'd love to get to 500. If you could click like on the video, subscribe to the channel, click that notifications bell. That's all I'm going to ask. That's the call to action, guys. That's all we're asking. Let's get right to the DraftKings stuff. Let's take a look at how my article did this week. So here it is, Best Buys for Week 2. My editor was sneaky. So he put, who's the better daily fantasy play in Week 2, Alvin Kamara, Todd Gurley, knowing that in the article I wrote that I like Todd Gurley better than Alvin Kamara for Week 2. Those editors are always super sneaky. Let me make this a little bigger for you guys. There we go. Starting with the quarterbacks, Ben Roethlisberger, 452 yards, 3 touchdowns, scored 1 on the ground as well, 41.98 fantasy points. If you paid up for him in tournaments, you did very well. Deshaun Watson scored 26.8 fantasy points, 300 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes, 326 yards, 6 touchdowns for the youngster. Absolutely insane. We knew this game was going to be a shootout, and it delivered. Tyrod Taylor was the one bust here at quarterback, only 15.44 points, did not quite reach value for him. We needed 18 fantasy points. I felt that he was a better play on FanDuel than he was on DraftKings in Week 1 or Week 2 because of the lower salary versus all the other quarterbacks over there. But on DraftKings, there were too many options at 200 more to get Patrick Mahomes, who had a much higher ceiling. And as you'll see, that's the choice that I made in cash. Matt Ryan decided to run 2 in, scored 31 fantasy points on his own. The problem with Matt Ryan is this week in, week out, right? Yes, I know he had 300 yards passing against Carolina both times last year, but he does not get there very often. He's the king of the 275-yard passing game. He had 272 with 2 passing touchdowns through the air and 2 rushing touchdowns, which helped him reach value. It's hard for him to have just a massive day. The fact that he had those 2 rushing touchdowns really put him over the top. Here's where it gets weird, okay? Todd Gurley. 22 touches, kind of like we thought he'd have, right? 19 carries, 3 targets, caught 3 balls, 42 yards on the ground, 31 yards through the air. So a very inefficient day for him in terms of yards per carry and yards per catch, all that sort of thing. Scrimmage yards, only 73 scrimmage yards for him. But hey, he got into the box 3 times, scored 32.3 fantasy points. Melvin Gordon, also a weird day for him. 9 carries only, 28 yards, 1 touchdown on the ground, 6 catches on 7 targets for 38 yards and 2 touchdowns for 30.6 DraftKings points. And they took their foot off the pedal, right? They were up, 28-3. They ended up winning this game 28-20. They really just took their foot off the pedal in the second half, gave all the carries to Austin Eckler, who did a really good job. Really weird to see that, especially with the Bills continuing to put points on the board in the second half. And kind of put this game into a position where they had a chance of getting it back. I like the Rams' philosophy more. Gurley left the game with a slight injury. He was cramping up. It was very hot in Los Angeles yesterday. To watch Melvin Gordon come out of that game when it's still in question was just odd at the NFL level. It was a weird coaching move, but hey, he got there in the first half. James Conner, 19.5 DraftKings points, 8 carries, 17 yards, and a touchdown. 5 catches on 5 targets. For 48 yards, and there was 1 catch he made where he came down out of bounds, but it was a pass interference call that might have been one of the best highlights on the day outside of Keelan Cole, because that Keelan Cole catch was just outstanding. He would have been 5 of 6 with 1 catch that was out of bounds. So he got to 19.5 points, paid off his salary, did what we need him to do. Didn't have a monster day like the first week, but it is what it is. Alvin Kamara, who obviously we're going to be riding these first 4 weeks of the season, 17.9 DraftKings points. That touchdown regression kind of came this week as all the work went to Thomas, who we were talking about on our shows last week, is going to be a fantastic leverage play off all the Kamara ownership in most weeks. 13 carries, 46 yards, 6 catches on 6 targets, still under 20 touches a game. Pretty much every game for Alvin Kamara, 53 yards through the air, 17.9 DraftKings points. Kareem Hunt, 15 DraftKings points, scored a touchdown through the air to kind of salvage it, 19 touches for him. Dalvin Cook, who we'll talk about in the first look video, for week 3. 10 carries, 38 yards, no touchdown, 3 catches, 5 targets for 52 yards. I like the yards from scrimmage. I don't like the usage right now with only 13 touches. He did get 12 DraftKings points. Antonio Brown. Now, this is going to be the big point of contention. People all on the Discord, people all on Twitter that I saw were saying how Antonio Brown killed them this week. One, he didn't kill you because he was 85% owned in cash, right? 85 to 90% owned in cash games. So he didn't really hurt you in the sense that if you had him, your opponents probably had him outside of maybe 10 or 15% of them in their head-to-head games. So realistically speaking, if I told you that Ben Roethlisberger was going to have 450 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, the Steelers were going to score as many points as they did, and Antonio Brown would have 9 catches on 17 targets, you'd still be all in on Antonio Brown. So realistically speaking, we got unlucky here with him only scoring 15.7 points. He didn't look as explosive as normal. I don't know if he was fighting some sort of leg injury, but he just didn't look Antonio Brown-like. Also got into an argument on the sideline with the offensive coordinator. That kind of is what it is. We'll leave that narrative street stuff to the narrative street stuff. But in terms of process, I'm fine with Antonio Brown going into yesterday, and I'm fine with Antonio Brown looking back at yesterday as well. Emanuel Sanders, 4 catches on 4 targets, 96 yards, 13.6 points. A little bit much. Not enough points for as much as his salary was, but he didn't kill you. Devin Funchess, 7 catches on 9 targets, 77 yards, 14.7 DraftKings points. Way better on points per dollar there. Michael Thomas, also considering 31.9 DraftKings points in week 1 for him. 12 catches on 13 targets, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns. Michael Thomas has 30 targets through 2 weeks. Just bank that for later. Keenan Allen came off of him because of the injury to Travis Benjamin. Talked about that on the Anti-Tanker Cast on Sunday morning, right before lock, right here on Twitch. Still had 6 catches on 8 targets, 67 yards, no touchdowns, 12.7 points. Corey Davis got off of him because of the offensive line injuries for the Titans, as well as Marcus Mariota not starting the game. He did not kill you if you played him, but you know, we weren't going to play him on Sunday morning. 5 catches, 7 targets, 55 yards, no touchdowns because he had Blaine Gabbert throwing the ball, 10.5 DraftKings points. I do like that he had the 7 targets in an off week with a backup quarterback. Quincy Enunwa, 11 targets once again in week 2 from Sam Darnold. Obviously his favorite target, and as long as the price stays friendly, we're going to keep riding Quincy Enunwa. 7 catches, 11 targets, 92 yards, 16.2 DraftKings points. Chris Godwin, he has averaged 15.9 DraftKings points on games where he played 40-plus snaps. He did that again yesterday. He had 16.6 DraftKings points. You pretty much know what you're going to get with Godwin. He does what he's going to do. Tight ends. This is where it got scary, but the fact that there was... people are looking at tight end saying, wow, I made a mistake at tight end because my tight end didn't do well. There was no cheap tight end that did well. Even ones I didn't write up didn't do well. None of the ones that I wrote up did well anyway. Jack Doyle ended the day with 4 fantasy points. Jonnu Smith, who, again, we got off of, you know, because of the...
Does anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
Bets Poker with the 100 bits, thank you very much. Jonnu Smith, who we got off of because of all the same situations that we got off of with Corey Davis, scored 0 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards. George Kittle was the absolute chalk, ended the week as the absolute chalk, 4.2 DraftKings points, 4 targets, 2 catches, and a backup tight end. Selleck got the touchdown. And David Njoku had 6 fantasy points, 7 targets. Love to see that. Only 4 catches and only 20 yards for a player that's as dynamic and explosive as he is, just not being utilized in this offense. He's playing a ton of snaps. He's getting a good amount of targets. I think that the switch is going to get flipped. Njoku will have a good game here or there with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. I think the switch flips once Baker Mayfield takes over this team, if he takes over this team at any point during this season. I think Njoku really, really explodes. Defense, 1 did good, 1 did not do good. Chargers, 10 fantasy points. 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 20 points. The Texans, with 3 of the top offensive linemen on the Titans out. And a backup quarterback, Blaine Gabbert, starting. They gave up 20 points to this team, and they had 1 sack. How do you only have 1 sack? What the hell? I mean, look, I know that Jadeveon Clowney was out. And I know that J.J. Watt is still amazing. But you've got to get more pressure. You got to get more pressure on an opposing quarterback, a backup quarterback, without Marcus Mariota there, with the offensive line woes that they had. And I know that they were getting kind of fancy in the first half, right? One of those touchdowns that they gave up was on a fake punt. It counts against the defense in terms of DraftKings scoring because it's scored as a touchdown pass, not a special teams touchdown. But, like, it is what it is. They scored 2 fantasy points, so that kind of sucked. Going on to my picks this week, Zeidenfeld.com. Every week I just write up. It's not behind a paywall. It's free, just my blog site, whatever. I'm picking 5 games against the spread. I'm not a sports bettor, but I'm doing it just to kind of track my stats for the whole season. Went 4-1 week 1. I said in the article, guys, I'm probably going to go 1-4 this week to balance the universe. I went 2-3. Bills plus 7.5 versus Chargers. They lost by 8. Saints against the Browns. They laid an egg. Lions at the 49ers. They covered. Rams against the Cardinals. They completely ran away from it. We're going to be picking on the Cardinals pretty much every week in daily fantasy, and we'll see what the spreads look like against them for this. Steelers versus Chiefs. The Chiefs obviously ran away with this one as, Mahomes is just a golden god. So 2-3 this week. Bring my season total to 6-4. Not terrible for my first week doing picks. Let's go on to my cash game lineup. We're looking at the 4-man from the Edge podcast. One of the listeners won this week, Blue Devil 3331. Congratulations to him in back-to-back weeks, winning the listener league in week 1, then taking down the 4-man in week 2. I am probably going to finish second in this every single week. I have 2 second-place finishes so far. It's an all-or-nothing league. Whatever. I want at least give me like a half point for second. Garbage. Anyway, here's my cash game lineup. Patrick Mahomes was my quarterback on DK all week long. Tevin Coleman, I'm going to discuss him in a second, obviously became an X factor, somebody who late in the week with Devonta Freeman being injured, we pushed Tevin Coleman in because at 5,300 you knew he was going to get 20 touches. He did get 20 touches, 100 yards on the ground, did not score a touchdown. 19.5 DraftKings points for 5,300 in salary. Was too good of value to pass up. James Conner, mispriced, still made salary. Antonio Brown, fine with the process. Obviously 100% owned in this 4-man game. George Kittle, the chalk. Melvin Gordon, somebody that we were on all week long. Texans defense, we saw what happened with them. Here's the 2v2 that kind of killed me, right? This Demaryius Thomas and Mike Williams for 2 of the 4K wide receivers. Mike Williams scored a touchdown, but really didn't have as much work as I thought he was going to have, only 2 targets on the day. So I got lucky here that he got into the end zone in the first half. And Demaryius Thomas, I was really high on this Broncos offense. He was cheaper than Emanuel Sanders, so I was allowed to get to Demaryius Thomas, and as the chat is saying right now, DT dropped like 3 or 4 balls this game, 11 targets. If at the decision point you told me that Demaryius Thomas was going to have 11 targets against an Oakland defense, I'd have been fine with my decision. 5 catches, dropped 3 or 4 balls, and only 18 yards. I don't know what was up there. It was just awful. The output from him. So this 9,500 or whatever could have been spent on those 240 mid 4,000 wide receivers that we wrote up. Guys like Devin Funchess and Nunwa, all those dudes would have given me, instead of the 17 points that these guys had, I would have had 30, would have pushed me up to 165-ish points. But the real problem is that the Tevin Coleman value, if you watched the first look from last week, I was all on Gurley. You read it in the Best Buys article. I was all on Gurley. Having Tevin Coleman in there and allowed that value allowed me to get up to Antonio Brown and get 1 extra stud in my lineup. Still having Melvin Gordon, who I think is a stud as well. Volume just like Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson from 2 years ago, and Todd Gurley, but for $2,000 less. I'm going to be on Melvin Gordon as long as his price stays there, and he's not playing a horrible defense. But if this is Gurley, this forces me onto 3 4K range wide receivers, and I get 40 to 45 points out of my wide receivers. I get 30 points out of this spot here, and I've got about 190 to 200 fantasy points out of my starting cash game lineup, which would have been amazing to jump from, as it was with 150 points, as I say pretty much all the time, as long as the salaries are where they're supposed to be. 150 points makes you profitable on DraftKings in cash more weeks than it doesn't. I ended up with 135 wins in head-to-heads and 50 losses, good enough for 63% in a profitable day on the week in cash games. Anytime you can hit that number, you got to be fine with it. Obviously, it could have been a smash day where I swept my head-to-heads, if only not for that Tevin Coleman news. So I'm all right with the way that the week went. we're going to get to it. Keep looking out on this channel for more videos throughout the week. If you click right here, you can subscribe. If you click right here, you can watch the first look for week 3. That's what you're going to want to do. And I'll catch up to you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.